This might be the first JDTV that needs to be edited because given the subject matter that we're going to talk about today, there's definitely going to be some profane language. So there's your warning now. As today we're going to go in direct contradiction of President Trump, and we're going to talk about Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey who, President Trump says? Jeffrey Epstein, the child trafficker, I say. So let's talk about it. There's a lot of depth to this story. I want to talk about some of the people who are agreeing with Trump, some of the people who are not agreeing with Trump, how the left is taking this whole thing on the other side. So first, let's talk about what Trump actually said. Trump went on, I don't know where it was. He was sitting in a room with Attorney General Pam Bondi and I believe Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, is sitting in between them. And Trump basically says, why are we still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? Jeffrey who? And tries to play off the Epstein files, which to me is a big no-no. Trump is most definitely in the wrong for that. And then you move on to his statement on Truth Social, where he doubles down and makes it way worse, framing the Epstein list as something that is written by the Democrats, Obama and Clinton to be specific, and then brings up issues from 2020, says, we need to be more focused on the 2020 election being stolen and all this other stuff, which I voted Trump in 2024. I did not vote Trump in 2020. I don't think that election was stolen. I think Trump needs to kind of just let it go. You won in 2024 anyway, so why does it matter, But anyway, Trump's bringing up these issues from 2020 and saying, why are we still talking about Epstein? And it's like, Epstein died in 2019, right? You're worried about the 2020 election being stolen? Last time I checked, 19 and 20 are relatively close to each other. So Trump is just handling the whole situation terribly. He's defending Pam Bondi, who a lot of people started laying the attack on. And I think that she's actually supposed to be kind of a fall guy. I think people are putting the people on the right that are attacking Pam Bondi are deviating their actual anger at Trump because they don't feel like they can actually be angry at Trump because that gives the left some sort of ground to stand on. So they're putting it all on Pam Bondi. But those people on the right are stupid. Those people are stupid because you can't blame Pam Bondi for saying stuff, number one, when she's sitting right next to President Trump. Number two, when President Trump appointed her. And number three, if Trump says that there's no list and that we shouldn't be talking about it, then why did Pam Bondi say that the list was sitting on her desk for review? And then after she said that, why didn't Trump say anything to contradict it? But now that it actually comes up and people are mad about it, Trump is trying to play this deflection game or the Trump base is trying to play this deflection game, fling it all on Pam Bondi. You guys are stupid. They clearly set it up in a way where they said, Dan Bongino is thinking about leaving the FBI if Pam Bondi doesn't resign. That was them testing you. What sources? They say sources say that. What fucking sources? They don't cite shit. Some fucking asshole like Nick Sorter will say it on Twitter and everybody believes it. Stupid. And it all goes back to Trump. That's the point that I'm making. The buck starts and ends with the president of the United States. Now, the only people I really see defending Trump are anons, like this account on X named Cat Turd. If you listen to accounts like Cat Turd on X, or any add-on, and that goes for the right or the left, no, you just should not be doing that. Morally check yourself. Realize, I'm listening to a dude named Cat Turd. I'll see tweets about Cat Turd, and people will be like, oh, look, Cat Turd's so base. Do you hear say it out loud. Don't just type it in the keyboard. Use your speech to text and say that out loud and tell me you don't sound ridiculous. But there's people like that. You have your standard neocons, the neocon politicians and influencers like Ben Shapiro. So why would people like Ben Shapiro be behind Jeffrey Epstein? Why would they want people to forget about Epstein and, side with Trump? I don't know. We'll get back to it in a minute. We will get back to that in a minute. But the one that kind of got me off guard a little bit in terms of somebody siding with Trump, and I don't know if this person would be considered on the right. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments below. But we have Stephen A. Smith, who goes on the Chris Cuomo show I don't know if that's what it's called, but he was talking to Chris Cuomo. So you guys can look this up. And he basically says, like Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not worried about Jeffrey Epstein. It doesn't affect me. I'm not one of these people. He basically alludes that the only people that would be worried about Epstein are incels. And he says, MAGA has the big, beautiful bill that passed and then all this other stuff going on. And this is what you want to worry about? Him and the Epstein list? Yeah, Stephen A. Smith, I think most people are, and this includes people on the left too, are pretty worried that Trump is trying to cover up a list that has child traffickers and pedophiles on it. That's pretty alarming if you ask me. Stephen A. Smith with the most dumb take I can imagine. I like Stephen A., but I think his handlers, his bosses, because Stephen A., I think he still works for ESPN. Allegedly. I'm not saying that I know anything. And I think his handlers got a hold of him because Stephen A. Smith is usually a little bit more based than that. I was really disappointed to hear that, and that changes my perspective on him. But me talking about this whole issue right now, talking about Jeffrey Epstein, every time I say his name, I'm going in direct defiance of what Trump said. You guys know that I voted for Trump in 2024. That does not mean that I endorse nor am behind everything that person does because I voted for them. Now, I voted for Biden in 2020. I didn't agree with everything Biden did during his presidency to the point where I wanted to switch over to Trump. Now, if I can go back, I don't know if I would have voted for anybody in either election, to be honest. I think both parties need a complete reevaluation and re-identity. But this proves my previous point that I am not a cult member to MAGA or to Trump. And I don't think MAGA itself, or at least the conservative side, there's Trump Republicans and MAGA. Maybe that is a cult. But people who are conservative who happen to support Trump, we all don't fall under the same bubble. It's not one big giant cult. And to exemplify that to you, I'm going to give you guys provable people that you can look up on, Google or X to get their statements, or on YouTube. And these are people that have actually defied Trump and have called Trump out personally about the Epstein list. This does not include people like Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly. Yeah, it's great that you guys had the event at Turning Point and you're talking about the Epstein list, but you're trying to blame it on Pam Bondi still. I know that you too, in particular, you political veterans who have been in this fucking game since I was 15, Megyn Kelly probably even longer, you guys know that the buck doesn't stop with Pam Bondi. Really? Come on now. So these are the real influencers who have actually called out Trump for the way he's handled the Epstein list. Starting with on the Patrick Bet David PBD podcast, Patrick Bet David show, they talked about it. Two of the co-hosts, Adam and Vinny, really went at it, with Vinny taking a hard opposition position to where Trump is. Opposition position to where Trump is, and Adam siding with him. You have Benny Johnson, who released a video calling out Trump specifically for it. Candace Owens has gone against Trump in this matter. Thomas Massey has gone against Trump in this matter. Ian Carroll and Joe Rogan, who people consider to be on the right, although I don't consider them to be on the right, have both called out Trump for the Epstein list. And Tucker Carlson at Turning Point USA called Trump out and Jeffrey Epstein out for the list and said that Epstein had ties to Israel and Mossad. So you can't say that everybody on the right is in this one big cult bubble. Some of the influencers I just named, like Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens, I implore you, if you're on the left, just give one of their videos a chance. Watch one of the stuff that they're being critical of Trump in, one of their most recent videos, or look up Tucker's speech at Turning Point USA, or watch Tucker debate Ted Cruz and, silence that Republican politician who justified Trump bombing Iran. Not everybody on the right conservative side is a cult. I truly am trying to make that a point, and it's probably going to be the last time I talk about it. Well, no, it probably won't. But I just really need you guys to understand that, because we can't pigeonhole each other like this. I know not everybody in the left is in a cult. And let me explain. There was a tweet by a Democratic influencer named Harry Sisson that said, Trump not releasing the Epstein files seems like a guilty verdict to me. And all the comments said, didn't Biden have access to those Epstein files as well? I incorrectly pointed out in the last video that Epstein died under the Biden administration. I was corrected by Davis Richards in the comments below. He said that Epstein died in 2019. I looked it up. That is true. He died under Trump's watch. So Trump is definitely involved in the Epstein list. I am not dejecting from the fact that Trump is 100% involved and has probably done the worst of the worst. But you guys have to open your eyes to the fact that the Democrats are acting very strange when it comes to this situation. So that opens the question, right? Why didn't Biden, if Epstein died in 2019 and they were prosecuting Trump and they had him on the ropes, right? Trump wasn't in power. They didn't have a Republican majority in Congress. So why didn't Biden, if he's using the DOJ to go after Trump, why didn't he look into the Epstein files? Why didn't he release it? Why wasn't it even brought up? Nobody even brought it up. So you got to say that at least the Trump administration is trying to handle it. They're handling it horribly, and I'm sure Trump is involved in the most heinous crimes possible. But the Biden administration basically pushed it off the desk. They said, you know what? We're just not going to touch it. And you got to ask the question, why? So I'm going to read you guys a list of Democrats that I compiled who have said nothing about the Epstein list. And then, to be fair, I'm going to point out a couple of the Democrats that have said something about the Epstein list. We are a balanced show here. And the more that I examine the Democratic and Republican Party, I'm starting to think that maybe my views align somewhat with the Democratic Party too. I'm really starting to feel like I'm more of a centrist. Maybe me describing myself as conservative at all is kind of wrong. I'm just for freedom and for America and for the principles. But anyway, back to the point I was making. Democrats who have said absolutely nothing. And you tell me, do you think any of these people have been to that island? Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, Gavin Newsom. Why haven't these politicians said anything about it? Gavin Newsom, busy. He's active on X all the time. He's tweeting at JD Vance saying, "Why are you at Disney World, JD Vance?" You can't call out Trump for not releasing the Epstein list. Why? Why won't you do that? Then you have Chuck Schumer, big notable Democrat, a leader of the Senate, I believe. Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House. And every one of these people has an almost identical tweet on their X, or on their Twitter, X, whatever. They have an identical tweet on their X, basically saying, oh, you know, the way that the floods have been in Texas is absolutely devastating. Trump cut funding for FEMA. So they're calling out Trump. They're active on this right now. They're active on X right now. Why aren't they talking about the Epstein thing? Unless they are also guilty. Democratic politicians who have called out the Epstein thing. You have AOC, Bernie Sanders, Harry Sisson, as I mentioned before. These are Bernie Sanders, not so much, but these are the outsiders. These are the outliers of the Democratic Party. All the people on Twitter complaining about it, these are not your big dog Democrats. Why? Why are they not taking this opportunity? They will literally talk about a flood that killed multiple people and use that to pin it against Trump. But when it comes down to an actual issue that is causing this huge divide within the Trump movement, and they won't say anything. You guys have to pose the question. Now, like I said, this is not me saying that Trump's innocent, but you guys have to at least be able to admit all these Democrats are not innocent. Somebody is guilty and everybody else is covering up for them, which makes them just as guilty. If it's Clinton, let's say it's Bill Clinton because he's the most probable suspect based on our prior knowledge. Let's say it's Bill Clinton who went to Epstein's Island. Let's say he had these, there's these tapes with him and children, right? Well, if Hillary's covering up for him, Hillary's just as bad. And if Joe Biden's covering up for them and Obama and all these people, so on and so forth. Why hasn't George Bush said anything about the Epstein list? Dick Cheney? Didn't Cheney might have passed away. If Cheney passed away, that's R.I.P. Cheney. But I just find it hilarious that all these big wig politicians, the ones that are at the top, the elites, the insider traders, right? The ones who make billions and or millions upon millions of dollars and are corrupt as hell, they're the only ones not talking about it. Everybody on the left and on the right, all the people seem united on this. But for some reason, all of those top tier Democrats coincidentally are all active on Twitter, all put out these identical tweets about the flood, and then also identically didn't say anything about the Epstein issue. So I don't understand it. I think that's all I have to say about the Epstein thing today. Trump's handling it horribly. My video before talking about being politically homeless, that dated way better than I could ever imagine. Because after Trump bombed Iran, I truly did feel politically homeless. And now we got Trump sending weapons to Ukraine, just like the Democrats. You got Trump covering up the Epstein list, just like the Democrats. And that's something that all the stuff that the left is using to lambaster Trump, exception to the bill, right? If you disagree with the bill, you disagree with the bill. We can get into economic policy later. But in terms of other policy, all other policy, right? All the stuff that the left is calling out Trump for doing, oh, he hasn't solved the Ukraine conflict. He's sending weapons to Ukraine. I agree, that's a problem. Trump should be held accountable. Biden did the same thing. Oh, Trump is loyal to Israel. He's sending money to Israel and allowing the suffering of the Gazan people to continue. I didn't see Biden stop it. He sent money to Israel. Our Israel lobby didn't stop when Biden was president. Oh, well, Trump is, handling the Epstein list horribly. He hasn't released the Epstein list. Biden could have also released the Epstein list. So you guys, when pointing out these issues with President Trump, realize that President Biden did most, if not all, of the exact same things that you're complaining about now. And then you'll call Trump supporters crazy for pointing it out with Biden. And Trump supporters will do the same thing with you, vice versa. And that's why maybe Elon's American Party is the way to go. America Party. Maybe that is the way to go. Maybe the Libertarian Party is the way to go. But I am completely disillusioned with the Democratic and Republican parties at this current stage. I see them both as being probably some evil figures on the top. I think both parties need a complete rebrand of everybody inside. And because these people worked under Joe Biden, right? Like Kamala Harris, like Gavin Newsom, and these people worked under Trump, like JD Vance, I don't want any of them either. We need people who have been ostracized. Like, honestly, I find myself agreeing with a lot of the stuff that Bernie Sanders has been saying lately. Bernie Sanders goes on CNN and says, you know what? I'm willing to admit it. The left, they didn't handle the border correctly. Trump's deportations are also wrong, but I'm man enough to say that the left didn't handle the border correctly. He goes on Joe Rogan and says, they've spent billions of dollars on Trump to get him elected. He's lobbied by all sorts of foreign lobbies, assets, companies, all sorts of stuff. Joe Rogan goes, well, they spent over $1 billion on Kamala Harris. And Bernie Sanders turns around and says, yeah, it's not just an issue with the Republican Party. The Democratic Party is being lobbied too and owned by big corporations just as much as the Republicans. They're not looking out for you. If you think that the Democrats are looking out for you, you are... The idea that either of these political parties could be looking out for us at this stage is almost a little bit ridiculous. Now, I recently thought that maybe there was a possibility that Trump was looking out for us because the Democrats just look that bad, right? But I was wrong. And unfortunately, I don't think you guys were right about the Democrats either. But anyway, now I'm going to call it quits. Let me know what you guys think of the whole Epstein situation. I don't know if you guys will see this video. I know I may have used a little bit of language that YouTube isn't a fan of, but we got to be unfiltered. I will see you all in the next one. Peace out.